Okay, here we go. We're going to work on finding slope given 2 points. But first we're going to do a quick little review. Let's say we've got this coordinate point. That's what we call it when we see these parentheses and the two numbers with the comma in between. It's a coordinate point. Now we could also write that coordinate point in a table. These two things mean the same thing because when we see a coordinate point, we know that the 2 is the x part of our point and the 3 is the y. And of course, we could also plot that point. And so how do we get here? Well, we first 2, that tells us where to go, right? From the origin, so we go over 2, that's our x, and we go up 3, that's our y. Okay? All right. So just a quick little review to remind us what does it mean when we see a 2, 3 with parentheses around it? And how do we put it into a table, right? So just a review for that. Now let's go ahead and look at 2 points. Let's do the same thing where we have 2 coordinate points. And we put those 2 points in a table. I like to call this a table for 2. And why would we even want to put the points in a table? Well, we'll find out. Or those 2 points plotted. All right, now that we see this, let's talk about how to find the slope given 2 points of a line. Because technically, we don't have a slope unless we have some sort of graph, like a line or some sort of curve, and then we can find the slope. So here we go. When we are talking about slope, let's say we're a little person and we are just walking along, right? If we're walking along on a flat surface like we do in the halls of Parkway North, we would say there's no slope. There's no rise, right? But if we were going for a walk, I don't know where, but all of a sudden we're rough terrain and it's going uphill, we'd be like, oh, this is tough because there's a slope. So to find slope, what we actually do is we figure out the rise, the amount of rise over the amount of run. Okay, so in this case, we'd say how much, let's say if we, from our start to, let's say where we're going to end, how much rise do we have over our run? So right now, before we find our slope, or we can say rate of change, those two things mean the same thing, we want to make sure that we're talking about of a line. So these 2 points plotted, let's put them in a line. All right? We can find the rate of change 2 ways. We can either find it by starting with our 2 points and then graphing them like we did over here, or using the table. So let's go ahead, and since these are small numbers, we can go ahead and graph and find our slope. All right, so here we go. Let's pick a different color. Oh, that's bright. And let's find our rise. So when I find the rise, I start with my bottom point, and I see how much I rise up. I'm rising up 1, 2, and then I'm running 1, 2. So I know 2 over 2, well, that's 1. Okay, so we can simplify that in our calculator or in our heads. But there's one last thing we have to do before we say we're done with our slope. We have to say, wait a minute, am I going uphill or downhill? And in this case, the quick way to find it out is just write your name. If I wrote my name on this line, woo, I'm going downhill, that means it's decreasing and it's a negative slope. So wonder if our 2 points, though, were something crazy like 1731 and negative 42, 1003. We wouldn't plot them, right? We couldn't find the slope that way. So we need a second way to find the slope of a line given 2 points. And that's where our table comes in. So let's pick a new color. How about pink? And so remember how we started with our lowest point to find the slope of the line. That's what I do with the table. I start with the lowest part of the table, which is the 1. I could have started with the 4 too, but I'm going to start with the 1. And I'm going to do a hoop. I'm going to say 1 minus 3, that's negative 2. And then I'll do the same thing on this side. Oh, by the way, that side, the y, that's finding our rise. And that makes sense, right? Because the y-axis right here is all about the up and the down. And so then I'm going to do the same thing on the x part. 4 minus 2 is 2. And the x is the run, which makes sense, right? This x-axis, you could do some running on it, right? You're going to run there, but you're definitely going to rise or climb up the y-axis. Okay, so how are we going to find our slope? Well, we put our rise over our run. So -2 over 2, that gives me -1. It's the same thing. So what we want to get good at is using our table. If we're given 2 points, throw them in a table for 2 and do the hoops. All right, that's it. Practice really does, knowledge really does happen when you practice, and you can retain it from all of your practice. And that's why we're here, to learn and retain. All right, thanks for joining me. Bye.